Yeah, man. I had to let y'all hear some of that 90s X-Men intro music right there. That little dun-dun-dun-dun-dun. When you heard that right there, Saturday morning, you grabbed your cereal, you propped your feet up, and you knew what time it was. Welcome to the Lawrence Report. And yes, like I said, X-Men is here. 90s kids, this is our time. This is our moment. I was so happy when I knew and when I found out that this show was going to be announced. Oh my God. Y'all see the shirt, man. Y'all see it. We are so back, y'all. Like, I know a lot of Marvel heads be saying that a lot, but it's the truth. We are so back. This X-Men 97 series was everything I wanted from the 90s, right? It was basically a continuation from where they left off, and I'm happy. This was good to me. This was absolutely incredible. The writers, the animation editors, everybody brought their A game to this series right here. But the story is easy to follow. They quickly pick up right from where basically they left off from back in the 90s. You know, when Professor Charles Xavier, he died, you know, he was in a coma. We know that Henry Gyrick basically shot Professor X with a blaster that basically put him in a coma, and eventually, unfortunately, he ended up dying. But like I said, they pick up right from where they left off, and now the team is searching for basically a new leader. Like, who's going to step up to the plate to replace Professor X? Will it be Cyclops and Jean Grey, who are basically some of the OGs, some of the originals, you know, some of the first ones that was in Charles Xavier's school of gifted mutants? Will it be them, or will it be another foe, a former ally? Sometimes we're talking about Magneto. We'll talk about Magneto a little bit later. But yeah, so the whole antithesis of this episode right here, they are trying to rescue Roberto da Costa, aka Sunspot, in episode 1. Let me tell you, this intro at the very beginning with Storm and Bishop, basically they're trying to figure out how in the world are these Sentinel parts basically being out on these streets right here. And Storm and Bishop, they come in kicking tail, for the lack of better terms. They are busting up everybody in this arms dealership thing when it comes to these Sentinel parts. And Bishop and Storm, and we also see Jean Grey and Cyclops, you know, they have a baby. They are about to be parents. So at the same time, Cyclops, he's trying to figure out, how do I step up and not try to replace Professor X, but try to step up to be a leader of these new X-Men, right? At the same time, him and Jean Grey are both worried about parenthood. And, you know, she even mentions to him that, you know, that there's other things bigger than the X-Men. Like, should we leave the X-Men? And Cyclops is like, no, we can't leave the X-Men. We was the first ones. It was the OGs. And so they're dealing with that dilemma right there. But we all know the team is always going to rally behind Cyclops. Now, Bolivar Trask and Henry Gyrick, these two are going to be basically the two main villains of, you know, episodes 1 and 2, right? Because both these men, they want to do everything in their power to destroy these mutants at all costs. So that means working together, creating Sentinel parts, whatever it means, we have to destroy these X-Men. That's their focal point when it comes to this series right here. And one of my favorite parts of this episode right here is when Cyclops basically tells, I'm paraphrasing here right here, he basically tells Storm, you know, when it comes to him attacking these men, he's like, it's time to bring out the elements, right? And Storm goes up into the sky. She does her thing, and all of a sudden, we do see those elements, and she completely just obliterates these men right here with her power. So that right there was dope to see. Now, considering that the X-Men, you know, they really don't have a true leader, they're wondering who is going to lead them, right? And while Jean Grey and Cyclops are debating about leaving, you know, they tell the team that they have an announcement, right? But before they can get to the announcement, they hear a loud bang, basically, that somebody has been intruding Professor X's office. It's none other than Magneto. Magneto comes in. The team has already got their weapons out. They're ready to go full blast. Like, who is coming to Professor X's office? Like, who can get access to that? And we see a will that Professor X basically left saying that, Magneto should basically run the new X-Men. Like, he should be in charge. He should be the leader. And of course, the team is skeptical about this. They have every right to be skeptical about this. We know that Magneto has been a long-time foe of the X-Men. So in episode 2, we see Magneto basically rescuing other humans. Maybe he is trying to turn over a new leaf. But again, like I said, I don't know if I fully can trust Magneto, right? And what's crazy is, Magneto, he does eventually decide to turn himself in. That's because Dr. Cooper is saying that from the UN is basically saying that has to be arrested for the crimes he committed against humanity when it comes to all the things he's done in the past. And at first I thought he was going to basically resist him and they was about to go into this big battle. But he said, you know what? I'll stand on trial. You know why? Because I feel like I'm an innocent man. So he goes to trial with Dr. Cooper from the UN, from these other high elected officials. And he stands on trial, but things, they turn bad, unfortunately. We see these anti-mutant demonstrators. They come into the human building where everybody's at, all the X-Men, and they break in, they storm in, and things of that nature. And we also see the Executioner. This is an arms dealer, basically. He was from episode 1, but now he has even more stronger high tech, right? So there's a big battle that's going on inside. The Executioner is getting ready to have this weapon in which he plans on taking out Magneto. We saw that right there. But unfortunately, as he's getting ready to do this shot and kill Magneto, or destabilize his powers, basically, Storm basically ends up in front of Magneto, right? And with this weapon, it takes away the powers. So Storm sacrifices herself for Magneto, because again, Magneto and them, they're all on the same team now. And Storm loses her powers. And Magneto is absolutely crushed. Storm is crushed herself. She's, reaching up saying, I can't, basically saying, I can't feel the elements, basically, right? She can't feel the rain, the storms and stuff like that. So she has no powers now. And Magneto kind of goes rogue almost. He has basically, he goes up to the sky with this crater of all these high profile elected officials. And he tells them basically that if it wasn't for Charles Xavier, I would kill all y'all right now. But because of Charles and because I'm trying to be a new man, I'm going to spare all y'all lives. And not to mention, we do see Jean Grey. Jean Grey is actually pregnant. She goes into labor. So we saw that the baby was born. So congratulations to Jean Grey and Scott Summers. A new baby is here. This part right here absolutely kind of broke me a little bit, because Storm now, she doesn't have any powers. So she's with Hank McCoy and they're trying to figure out what's going on with her powers. And he feels like it could be permanent damage, right? So she writes a letter to the X-Men saying, thank you, but now I must go. I must be on my own. So basically, she's no longer a part of the team because she feels like if she doesn't have powers, how can she be beneficial to help the team out at the end of the day, right? And while the team is crying, at the end of the episode, we hear a knock on the door. And it's Jean Grey, but it's Jean Grey's clone, which I believe has something to do with Mr. Sinister. We haven't seen him yet. We know that he's a big villain in the X-Men franchise. So we'll see what's going on with that right there. But I enjoyed this X-Men series right here, X-Men episode 1 and 2. It brought me back to the 90s. This is what I grew up on right here. And, if there was a favorite scene that you like, for me, my favorite scene was back in episode 1, we saw Bishop and Storm teaming up. That was dope. And I also love Logan. Logan had to drive to the hospital. That was another one of my favorite scenes. He was driving to the hospital as a madman, basically panicking like any other man who would, knowing that a baby was on the way. So those exactly were my two favorite scenes right there. But as always, let me know and make sure you comment below what did you like the best about X-Men 97. And as always, thank you for tuning into the Lawrence Report.